The morning sun cast long shadows across the central plaza of New Geneva Colony as Commander Vextar of the Hegemony watched the preparations with cold satisfaction. 3 makeshift gallows stood like dark monuments against the pale sky, their wooden beams creaking in the gentle breeze. Around the plaza, his Zelkan soldiers herded the remaining human colonists into viewing positions, their energy rifles ensuring compliance. "Make certain every human sees this," Vextar commanded his lieutenant through their neural link. "Today, they learn the price of resistance." The Zelkans had arrived 6 months ago, claiming New Geneva under hegemony expansion protocols. Most human colonies had surrendered immediately when faced with the overwhelming technological superiority of the Galactic Empire. New Geneva should have been no different. The colonists were farmers, miners, and merchants, simple people trying to build a life on the frontier worlds. But 3 children had changed everything. Vextar's mandibles clicked in annoyance as he recalled the incident. Sarah Chen, age 14, Marcus Rodriguez, 15, Amy Thompson, just 13 years old. They had been caught attempting to sabotage the communication array that connected New Geneva to the hegemony network. Such a naive, pointless gesture of defiance. The colonists had begged for mercy. The children's parents had offered themselves instead. The local administrator had promised complete compliance if the children were spared. But Vextar understood that mercy was weakness, and weakness invited further rebellion. "Bring the prisoners," he ordered. The crowd's murmur turned to anguished cries as the 3 children were escorted to the gallows. Sarah walked with her head held high, her dark eyes defiant even as tears streamed down her face. Marcus tried to comfort Amy, who sobbed quietly as they climbed the wooden steps. The boy's hands shook, but he refused to show fear to his captors. Dr. Elena Chen broke from the crowd, fighting against the Zelkan guards who held her back. "Please, she's just a child. Take me instead." Vextar studied the woman with mild interest. Dr. Chen was the colony's chief medical officer, valuable enough to keep alive, but her daughter's execution would serve a greater purpose. "Dr. Chen," Vextar's translator device converted his clicks and chittering into human speech. "Your offspring chose to act against hegemony interests. Actions have consequences." "They're children," Dr. Chen screamed. "They don't understand what they're doing." "Then today they will learn." Vextar turned away from her desperate pleas. The executioner, a hulking Zelkan enforcer, placed the nooses around each child's neck with mechanical precision. Sarah looked across the crowd, searching for her mother's face. When their eyes met, the girl mouthed the words, "I love you." Marcus stood straight, his young voice carrying across the plaza as he shouted, "Earth will not forget us!" Amy could barely stand, her legs shaking as she whispered a prayer her grandmother had taught her. Vextar raised his armored hand. The crowd fell silent except for the sound of weeping parents and friends. Even some of his own soldiers seemed uncomfortable, though they maintained their positions. "Let this be remembered," Vextar announced. "Rebellion brings death. Compliance brings life. Choose wisely." His hand fell. The trap doors opened with a sound like thunder. Dr. Chen's scream echoed across the plaza as her daughter's body dropped and went still. Around her, the other parents collapsed in anguish. The colonists wept openly, many falling to their knees in the dust. But in the back of the crowd, one man stood perfectly still. Jack Morrison had arrived on New Geneva just 2 days before the hegemony occupation. Officially, he was a geological surveyor looking for mineral deposits in the outer territories. His credentials were perfect, his cover story thoroughly documented. The colonists had welcomed him warmly, grateful for any sign that Earth still cared about their frontier world. None of them knew that Jack Morrison was the most dangerous human being in the galaxy. As the children's bodies swayed in the morning breeze, Jack felt something cold and precise settle in his chest. It was a feeling he knew well, the calm that came before the storm, the stillness that preceded devastation. He had felt it on Kepler 442 when hegemony forces massacred a human diplomatic mission. He had felt it at the siege of Proxima Station when alien bombardment killed 10,000 civilians. He had felt it in a dozen dark corners of space where humanity's enemies learned too late what they had awakened. Jack's augmented eyes recorded every detail of the execution. The exact height of each gallows, the number and positioning of guards, the command structure evident in how the aliens moved and communicated. Most importantly, he memorized the face of Commander Vextar, standing proud and satisfied as 3 children died for the crime of refusing to surrender their world. The crowd began to disperse, driven away by Zelkan's soldiers. Jack moved with them, just another grieving colonist, shuffling back to his temporary quarters. But unlike the others, his grief had purpose, his sorrow had direction. In the small apartment the colony administration had assigned him, Jack opened a sealed case hidden within his geological equipment. Inside, cushioned in impact-resistant foam, lay the components of a custom rifle that had no equal in human space. The weapon had been crafted specifically for him by Earth's finest military engineers, incorporating technologies that officially did not exist. The barrel was forged from metamaterials that could withstand temperatures that would melt conventional steel. The targeting system interfaced directly with Jack's neural implants, allowing him to calculate trajectories that accounted for gravity, wind, humidity, atmospheric composition, and even the rotation of the planet itself. The ammunition was equally specialized. Smart rounds that could adjust their flight path mid-trajectory and penetrate any known armor. But the most dangerous component was Jack Morrison himself. Born on Earth's moon during the early days of human expansion, Jack had grown up in low-gravity environments that shaped his physical development in subtle but significant ways. His bone density was perfectly optimized for stability. His nervous system had adapted to process spatial relationships with inhuman precision. His respiratory and circulatory systems could function efficiently in a variety of atmospheric conditions. When the hegemony began its expansion into human space, Earth's military had identified Jack as a candidate for their most classified program. For 8 years, he had undergone modifications that enhanced every aspect of his natural abilities. Neural implants sharpened his reflexes and calculation speed. Genetic therapy optimized his muscle memory and hand-eye coordination. Psychological conditioning eliminated fear, doubt, and hesitation from his operational mindset. The official records listed him as killed in action during the Battle of Titan. In reality, Jack Morrison had been reborn as humanity's ultimate weapon, a weapon that operated in the spaces between wars, where conventional forces could not reach. As Jack assembled his rifle with practiced movements, his implants automatically connected to New Geneva's information networks. The colonists' personal devices, the hegemony's own communication systems, even the environmental sensors scattered throughout the settlement, all became sources of tactical data. Within minutes, he had a complete picture of the occupation force. 237 Zelkan soldiers, 15 armored vehicles, 1 orbital support vessel, standard hegemony occupation protocols, designed to maintain control with minimal resource expenditure. They had planned for human resistance, poorly organized farmers with hunting rifles and improvised explosives. They had not planned for Jack Morrison. His first target would be Commander Vextar. The alien leader had made himself visible during the execution, demonstrating his authority over life and death. Such displays of power were useful for intimidation, but they also revealed patterns of behavior that could be exploited. Through the apartment's small window, Jack could see the hegemony command post established in the colony's former town hall. Zelkan soldiers patrolled the perimeter in predictable patterns. Guard rotations occurred every 6 hours. Communication checks happened every 30 minutes. Professional military discipline, but adapted for controlling a defeated population rather than fighting an active war. The aliens were confident in their superiority, comfortable in their assumption that humans posed no real threat. That assumption would be their downfall. Jack's rifle was now fully assembled, its dark metal seeming to absorb the room's light. He attached a specialized scope that could function across multiple electromagnetic spectrums, allowing him to see clearly in conditions that would blind unaugmented humans. The weapon's smart targeting system synchronized with his neural implants, creating an interface between man and machine that bordered on the supernatural. Outside, the sun was setting over New Geneva. The three gallows still stood in the central plaza, their grim silhouettes a reminder of the morning's horror. But Jack felt no despair as he watched the dying light. Instead, he felt the familiar satisfaction that came with preparation, with the knowledge that every element was falling into place. Commander Vexitar would soon learn that humanity's children were not defenseless. He would learn that their deaths carried a price beyond his imagination. He would learn what it meant to face a species that had crawled up from the bottom of Earth's gravity well, that had conquered their own solar system through sheer determination, that had never once in their entire history backed down from a fight. Most importantly, Vexitar would learn that some humans were not farmers or miners or merchants. Some humans were predators. As darkness settled over the colony, Jack began his final preparations. Tomorrow the real war would begin. Tomorrow the hegemony would discover that they had made a fatal mistake. They had hanged human children, not knowing that humanity's most ruthless marksman was coming for them all. The first shot came at dawn. Lieutenant Kexmar was completing his morning patrol around the colony perimeter when his head simply ceased to exist. The smart round had struck him precisely at the base of his skull, traveling through his brainstem and exiting through his mandibles with enough force to spray the administrative building's wall with alien blood. The sound of the shot didn't reach the command post until 3 seconds later, a distant crack that echoed across the valley like breaking stone. By then, Jack Morrison was already repositioning, his rifle broken down into components that fit easily into a standard geological survey kit. Commander Vexitar arrived at the scene within minutes, his tactical armor gleaming in the morning sun. He studied the body with cold calculation, noting the precision of the wound and the complete absence of witnesses. The kill shot had come from at least 800 meters away, fired from an elevated position that provided clear sight lines and multiple escape routes. Impossible, Sub-Commander Zaltek chittered nervously beside him. No human weapon on this colony has such range or accuracy. Vexitar's compound eyes traced the trajectory angle backward toward the rocky hills that surrounded New Geneva. Perhaps we underestimated their capabilities. Double the patrols. Establish overlapping fields of fire. I want every high ground position monitored. But even as he gave the orders, Vexitar felt a chill of unease. In 40 years of conquest across the galaxy, he had learned to recognize the signs of organized resistance, improvised explosives, ambushes using captured weapons, desperate last stands in fortified positions. These were the patterns of defeated peoples making futile gestures. This felt different. The second shot came 6 hours later. Sergeant Nextar was manning a checkpoint at the colony's eastern entrance when the round took him through the chest, the impact spinning him around before he collapsed behind the concrete barrier. This time, the shot had come from nearly a kilometer away, threaded through a gap between buildings that provided only a few centimeters of clearance. The third shot followed 20 minutes after that. Corporal Jexmar died instantly as he emerged from the mess hall, struck by a round that had somehow curved around the edge of a storage building to find its target. The bullet's trajectory defied conventional ballistics, suggesting guidance systems far beyond what the colonists should possess. By nightfall, 7 Zelkan soldiers were dead. Vexitar stood in the command post, studying tactical displays that showed absolutely nothing useful. His soldiers reported no muzzle flashes, no heat signatures, no electromagnetic emissions that would indicate advanced weaponry. The shooter appeared, struck with impossible precision, and vanished like smoke. "Sir," Communications Officer Veltar approached hesitantly. "We're receiving requests for support from Orbital Command. They want to know our status." Vexitar's mandibles clicked in frustration. He could hardly report that a single human sniper was systematically eliminating his forces. The hegemony would view such a claim as either incompetence or cowardice. "Tell them we're conducting enhanced security operations," he ordered. "No additional support required." But privately, Vextar was beginning to suspect that they faced something unprecedented. Jack Morrison crouched in a drainage tunnel 200 meters beneath the colony, studying surveillance feeds from the network of micro-drones he had deployed throughout the settlement. Each drone was smaller than a human fingernail, virtually undetectable by conventional sensors, and capable of providing real-time intelligence about enemy positions and movements. The hegemony forces were adapting faster than he had expected. Patrol patterns had become more random. Guard rotations now included counter-sniper protocols. They had established overlapping fields of observation that made traditional hide positions extremely dangerous. But they were still thinking conventionally. Jack's neural implants processed the tactical data with superhuman speed, identifying weaknesses in their defensive adjustments. The aliens were trying to protect against a normal sniper, someone who would establish a hide, take a shot, and either escape or be destroyed. They couldn't conceive of a shooter who could strike from impossible angles and disappear into infrastructure they didn't even know existed. The drainage tunnels were just the beginning. New Geneva had been built by humans, with human considerations for maintenance access, emergency evacuation routes, and defensive preparations that the colonists had hoped they would never need. Jack had spent his first day mapping every passage, vent, and hidden space in the settlement. From his current position, he could access 17 different shooting positions without ever appearing above ground. His smart rounds could navigate through the tunnel system itself, emerging at predetermined points to strike targets that believed themselves protected by solid cover. More importantly, Jack was learning the alien psychological patterns. They were disciplined soldiers, but they had never faced an enemy who could kill them without warning, from distances they couldn't even imagine. Fear was beginning to creep into their movements. They hesitated before entering open areas. They clustered together for mutual protection, making themselves better targets. Jack selected his next victim with careful consideration. Captain Heltar commanded the Alien Quick Response Team, the unit responsible for investigating the sniper attacks. Eliminating him would disrupt their counter-operations and force them to reorganize their command structure. The captain was currently reviewing security footage in a second-floor office of the administrative building, surrounded by guards and confident in his protection behind reinforced walls. But the building's original architect had included maintenance access to the ventilation system, and Jack had modified his smart rounds to navigate complex three-dimensional paths. Jack fired from a position 3 blocks away, the round traveling through sewage pipes, up a vertical shaft, through an air conditioning duct, and finally emerging from a ceiling vent directly above Captain Heltar's workstation. The alien died without ever knowing he was in danger. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. Subcommander Zaltek found Heltar's body and immediately ordered the evacuation of all multi-story buildings. His soldiers began exhibiting clear signs of stress, constantly scanning empty air for threats that could materialize from any direction. Radio chatter increased dramatically as nervous troops requested permission for routine movements. But the killing had only begun. Over the next 3 days, Jack systematically dismantled the hegemony's command structure. He killed their communications officer while the alien was supposedly safe inside an underground bunker. He eliminated their heavy weapons specialist from a distance of 2 kilometers, the shot threaded between moving patrol vehicles with timing precise to the microsecond. He destroyed their supply convoy by placing smart rounds in their fuel tanks from positions that surveillance later proved to be physically impossible. Each death was accompanied by evidence of capabilities that the hegemony couldn't explain. Bullets that curved around obstacles, shots that came from directions where no human could have been positioned, precision that suggested either impossibly advanced technology or supernatural intervention. The aliens began to whisper that they faced not a human soldier, but some kind of demon. Jack encouraged this perception. On the fourth night, he infiltrated the hegemony's command post itself. Security cameras showed empty corridors and sealed entrances, but Jack moved through spaces the aliens didn't know existed. Between wall panels, through utility conduits, along paths that required him to dislocate joints and compress his enhanced skeleton into configurations that would cripple normal humans. He left evidence of his presence without taking any shots. A hegemony battle knife stuck in Sub-Commander Zaltek's pillow, millimeters from where the alien's head had been. Personal photographs from the dead captain's quarters arranged on Commander Vextar's desk. A message written in the alien's own language on the Situation Room's main display. The children's names were Sarah, Marcus, and Amy. When Vexatar discovered these calling cards the next morning, something fundamental changed in the alien commander's demeanor. The cold confidence was gone, replaced by the darting eyes and nervous movements of prey that knows it's being hunted. "Sir," Zaltek approached carefully, "perhaps we should request extraction. This thing, it's not normal resistance. It's something else." Vexatar studied the message on the display screen. The human had not only penetrated their most secure facility, but had also demonstrated detailed knowledge of the executed children. This was personal. This was revenge. "Increase perimeter patrols to maximum range," Vextar ordered. "Establish listening posts at 5-kilometer intervals. Deploy every sensor drone we have. If this creature moves, I want to know about it." But even as he spoke, Vextar suspected it was already too late. They weren't fighting a human sniper. They were fighting something that human civilization had created specifically to kill beings like them. A weapon so perfectly adapted to its purpose that it might as well have been designed by a vengeful god. High above New Geneva, the hegemony orbital vessel received an encrypted transmission requesting immediate support. The commander was reporting unprecedented resistance and requesting authorization to use orbital bombardment against specific targets. The response came back within an hour. "Negative. Colony has strategic value. Resolve situation with ground forces." Commander Vextar read the message and felt his mandibles click in despair. He was trapped on New Geneva with an enemy he couldn't see, couldn't predict, and couldn't kill. An enemy who knew every secret passage, every hidden approach, every weakness in their defenses. An enemy who had been personally wronged by the execution of 3 human children. As night fell over the colony, Vextar stood in his fortified command center and wondered if he would live to see another dawn. Around him, his remaining soldiers maintained their positions with the grim determination of the already dead. None of them noticed the nearly invisible drone that hovered just outside the command center's main window, its micro-camera recording everything as Jack Morrison selected his next target with methodical precision. The hunt was far from over. The transmission reached Commander Vextar at 0347 hours, ship time. The message was brief and carried the highest priority encryption. "Hegemony intelligence has identified your adversary. Uploading file designation, Ghost 7. Vextar's compound eyes widened as the classified file appeared on his personal display. What he read there challenged everything he thought he knew about human military capabilities. Subject, Jack Morrison, designation Ghost 7, species, human, enhanced, status, officially killed in action, Battle of Titan, false designation, actual status, active operative, Earth Special Operations Command, Confirmed eliminations. 847 hegemony personnel across 23 star systems. Primary weapons, variable, preference for precision elimination, threat level, extinction class. The file contained grainy surveillance footage from a dozen worlds. A figure in environmental armor materializing from impossible concealment to strike alien positions. Bodies arranged with surgical precision across battlefields where no human forces were supposed to exist. Entire occupation garrisons found dead with no evidence of how they had been killed, but it was the psychological profile that made Vextar's breathing apparatus stutter in fear. Subject demonstrates complete emotional dissociation during combat operations. Post-mission analysis indicates no stress responses, no hesitation markers, no evidence of conscience-based limitations. Recommended engagement protocol. Avoid contact. Request immediate evacuation if Ghost 7 presence confirmed. The final entry in the file was dated just hours ago. Ghost 7 observed on New Geneva colony. All hegemony personnel advised to consider location compromised. Evacuation authorized under Protocol 7. Vextar slammed his armored fist against the display console. Protocol 7 was reserved for encounters with weapons of mass destruction or supernatural phenomena. The Hegemony Council was essentially admitting that a single human operative was equivalent to a planetary bombardment. Sir? Subcommander Zaltek entered the command center, his movements carefully controlled to hide the tremor in his primary limbs. We've lost contact with Patrol 7. Last transmission was a routine check-in from the eastern perimeter. Vextar didn't need to investigate. He already knew they would find the patrol's remains arranged in perfect formation, each soldier killed by a single precise shot. The human was accelerating his campaign, picking apart the occupation force with methodical efficiency. "How many effective soldiers do we have remaining?" Vextar asked. 43 combat-capable, sir. Morale is deteriorating." 43 soldiers out of an original force of 237. The human had eliminated nearly 80% of their strength in less than a week, and they had never even seen him clearly enough to attempt return fire. Vextar made a decision that would have been unthinkable a week ago. Initiate communication with the human population. I want to speak with their colonial administrator. 20 minutes later, Dr. Elena Chen stood in the command center under heavy guard, her face a mask of controlled hatred. She had barely spoken to the aliens since her daughter's execution, spending her time treating wounded colonists and maintaining what remained of the colony's medical services. Dr. Chen? Vextar's translator converted his nervous chittering to human speech. "We need to establish contact with the individual who has been attacking our forces." Elena's laugh was sharp and bitter. "You want me to help you catch Sarah's killer's avenger? You must be desperate. We wish to negotiate." "Negotiate." Elena's voice rose in disbelief. "You hanged my daughter and 2 other children in front of their families, and now you want to negotiate?" Vexitar's mandibles clicked in agitation. "The tactical situation has changed. We're prepared to offer concessions in exchange for cessation of hostilities." Elena studied the alien commander with cold calculation. She could see the fear in his compound eyes, the way his armor trembled slightly despite his attempts at composure. Whatever was hunting these creatures had them terrified. "I don't know who you're looking for," she said finally, "but I hope they find you all." That night, Jack Morrison made his final preparation. He had monitored the conversation between Dr. Chen and Commander Vextar through surveillance equipment planted throughout the command center. The aliens were ready to break. They were offering concessions, talking about evacuation, beginning to understand that their technological superiority meant nothing against an enemy who refused to fight by their rules. But Jack wasn't interested in their surrender. This wasn't about military objectives or strategic advantage. This was about 3 children who had died because they refused to accept defeat. and the message their deaths would send across human space. From his position in the colony's old mining tunnels, Jack assembled a device that had taken him 3 days to construct from salvaged parts and specialized components hidden in his equipment. The tactical nuclear charge was small by military standards, barely sufficient to level a city block, but more than adequate for his current purpose. Jack's neural implants calculated the optimal placement with inhuman precision. The device would detonate beneath the hegemony command post, vaporizing the entire alien leadership while leaving the colonist areas largely intact. The electromagnetic pulse would disable their orbital communications, trapping the survivors on the planet's surface where they could be eliminated at leisure. But first, he had a personal message to deliver. Jack emerged from the tunnels 300 meters from the command post, moving with perfect silence through shadows that seemed to bend around his enhanced form. His armor's active camouflage rendered him nearly invisible to conventional sensors, while his augmented reflexes allowed him to avoid automated detection systems with inhuman grace. The perimeter guards never saw him coming. Jack killed the first sentry with a vibro knife that parted alien chitin like tissue paper. The second died to a precisely thrown projectile that crushed his breathing apparatus. The third managed to raise his weapon before Jack's enhanced hand closed around his throat with enough force to snap vertebrae. Inside the command post, alarms should have been screaming, but Jack had disabled the security network 3 hours ago, replacing the surveillance feeds with looped footage that showed empty corridors and vigilant guards who were already dead. He moved through the facility like a ghost made solid, leaving bodies in his wake that would not be discovered until morning. Each kill was precise, silent, and personally satisfying. These aliens had watched 3 children die and felt nothing. Now they would learn what human vengeance looked like when it wore the face of their worst nightmares. Commander Vextar was in his private quarters, reviewing evacuation protocols on a secure terminal, when the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in seconds later, bathing the room in hellish red illumination. Vexitar reached for his sidearm, but a voice from the darkness stopped him cold. "I wouldn't move if I were you." The words were spoken in perfect hegemony standard, with an accent that suggested formal military training. Vextar's eyes adjusted to the dim lighting, searching for the source of the voice. Jack Morrison stepped out of the shadows like death-given form. His armor was matte black and seemed to absorb the emergency lighting. His helmet's visor reflected nothing, creating the impression that a void inhabited human-shaped armor. In his hands, he carried a weapon that Vextar's enhanced tactical systems couldn't identify or categorize. "You killed 3 children," Jack said conversationally. "Their names were Sarah Chen, Marcus Rodriguez, and Amy Thompson. Do you remember them?" Vextar's translator struggled with the human's calm tone, as if discussing planetary weather rather than issuing death threats. "You're the sniper, the one they call Ghost 7. "I'm the one who's been watching you die slowly for the past week," Jack corrected. "Watching your soldiers discover that they're not the apex predators they thought they were. Watching you realize that humans aren't the helpless farmers you expected." Jack stepped closer, and Vextar could see his own reflection multiplied in the human's helmet visor, a terrified alien commander backed against his own wall. "Those children fought back because humans don't surrender," Jack continued. "They don't kneel, they don't accept defeat, and when you kill their young, they send people like me to balance the equation." Vexitar's hand moved slowly toward his sidearm. Jack's head tilted slightly. "Go ahead," the human said. "I'm curious to see how fast you think you are." Vextar's hand froze. He had seen the aftermath of this human's work. Impossible shots, supernatural precision, kills that defied every tactical doctrine in hegemony military training. Drawing his weapon would be suicide. "What do you want?" Vexitar asked. "I want you to send a message," Jack replied. "To every hegemony fleet, every occupation force, every alien commander who thinks humans are easy prey. Tell them what happened here. Tell them that 3 human children died rather than surrender, and that their deaths summoned something the hegemony should fear more than any weapon in their arsenals." Jack's helmet retracted, revealing a human face that was utterly calm despite the carnage he had wrought. His eyes were the pale blue of Earth's sky, and they held no trace of mercy or doubt. "Tell them that humans remember their dead," Jack continued. "Tell them that we will cross the galaxy to balance the scales. Tell them that for every child they hang, we will send a ghost to haunt their nightmares." Jack raised his weapon, and Vextar saw death approaching with mathematical precision. "And tell them," Jack said softly, "that this is what happens when they underestimate the species that climb to the top of Earth's food chain." The blast that consumed the hegemony command post could be seen from orbit. The tactical nuclear device vaporized the building and everyone inside it, sending a column of superheated plasma into the night sky. The electromagnetic pulse disabled every piece of alien technology within a 50-kilometer radius. The surviving hegemony soldiers found themselves stranded on New Geneva with no communications, no heavy weapons, and no command structure. They lasted 18 hours before they began surrendering to the human colonists they had been occupying. Dr. Elena Chen stood in the ruins of the command post 3 days later, watching recovery teams search for alien survivors. The geological surveyor who had called himself Jack Morrison was gone, vanished as completely as if he had never existed. Only his official identification remained, left on her medical station with a handwritten note. "Sarah's sacrifice saved more children than she ever imagined." The hegemony evacuation ships arrived a week later, their commanders pale and shaken as they collected the traumatized survivors. The official report would classify the New Geneva incident as an encounter with anomalous human military capability and recommend extreme caution in future colonization efforts. But in the barracks and mess halls of hegemony ships across the galaxy, a different story spread. Soldiers whispered about the ghost of New Geneva, the human demon that had emerged from nowhere to avenge 3 dead children. They spoke of impossible shots and supernatural precision, of a predator that hunted aliens who thought themselves safe behind walls of technology and military doctrine. Some claimed the ghost was still out there, moving between star systems, watching for the next time someone underestimated humanity's capacity for righteous fury. Others insisted it was just propaganda, designed to make hegemony forces hesitant in their expansion efforts. But every alien commander who read the classified reports understood one fundamental truth. The species that had produced Jack Morrison was not ready to be conquered. They were a people who remembered their martyred children and sent nightmares to balance the scales. And in the depths of space, wherever human colonies faced alien oppression, parents would tell their children about Sarah, Marcus, and Amy. 3 young people who chose death over surrender and whose sacrifice had summoned humanity's guardian angel. The ghost was out there, watching and waiting, ready to remind the galaxy that humans protected their own. Even in death, especially in death, no human child would ever hang alone again.